Hello, everyone, and welcome to today. Today is Tuesday, May 12th, 2026. This is our May 2026 webinar, and my name is Anthony Mills. I am the Executive Director of GInI, Global Innovation Institute, and I want to welcome you here today. Today, I will be making a presentation about the Certified Future Shaping Organization accreditation, the business accreditation called CFSOrg. And I have one of my colleagues with me who will help me with some of the questions at the end. So I just, first of all, want to welcome everyone here. For those of you who may be new, Global Innovation Institute is the world's leading professional certification, accreditation, and membership organization in the field of applied business innovation. And that does include the art and practice of future shaping and all of the activities that go with it, which I'm going to highlight in just a minute. So again, welcome to everyone. Let us know where you're joining us from. I know there's people here from all over the world joining us, and quite a healthy audience we have today. So let us know in the chat window where you're from. We'd love to know that. Thank you all for doing that. And as I'm going to make a presentation about this, and as we go along, you'll probably have some questions and comments. So at the end, we'll have an opportunity to discuss your questions, answer your questions, discuss any comments you have, and try to learn more collectively as a group about the Certified Future Shaping Organization accreditation. So, and again, my name is Anthony Mills, and I am the Executive Director of Global Innovation Institute, a role I've held for over 10 years now. With that, we'll get started in the presentation. Let me move over to the presentation, and I will share my screen after I launch the presentation mode. And let's see here. I'm going to share that there. And everyone should be seeing my presentation. And hopefully you're seeing that. Let me make one more quick adjustment here. Okay, so diving in then. So what we're talking about today is GINI's latest business accreditation, and actually it has a new professional certification and a new business accreditation and an underlying body of knowledge that I'll touch on that it has launched very recently. The professional certification is the Certified Future Shaping Professional, and the accreditation is the Certified Future Shaping Organization, and the body of knowledge is called the Applied Future Shaping Master Book. Our primary focus today is on the organizational accreditation, Certified Future Shaping Organization. So let me sort of start by laying some groundwork and a foundation here to make sure we all are on the same page and understand what future shaping is, because a lot of times we have this temptation to confuse it with foresight or strategic foresight, and it's a lot more than that. So foresight is about looking out and studying trends and events and other situations and looking at what's going on in the world and seeing what may come. But having foresight alone does not necessarily infer that we're doing anything with that foresight, that we're taking any action on it. Just because we have foresight doesn't mean we're doing anything with it. So having foresight is a necessary prerequisite, a precursor to doing something strategically. But just having foresight and just going through all of the work to develop foresight is only the beginning. It's not the end. It's only a part of the equation and a part of the process. So future shaping is about combining foresight with strategic actions to actually try to proactively influence and shape what comes next. So it's a lot more than just foresight. Future shaping combines strategic foresight, which is foresight work with a strategic purpose, with strategic futuring, which is actually taking strategic actions to actually try to shape and impact and ultimately own your future. You know, that's the idea, is we want to be the masters of our future. We want to own the future. We don't want to just know about the future, know what may be coming. We want to actually do something and not after the fact, reactively or responsively, but before the fact, and so preemptively. So future shaping involves proactive and preemptive action, not merely just having foresight, but actually acting on that foresight to influence and shape the future as much as possible. And the goal is to try to achieve what we call our ideal and preferred future. So when we look out, when we use foresight, and we look out into the future based on where trends are going and what things are happening in the world, and we look at the drivers behind those and the what's called the critical uncertainties that are going to shape the future, which are going to have the big impact and determine the future. When we look at that range of plausible future scenarios, there are some of those scenarios that we would prefer not to happen, and other scenarios that we would prefer to happen. And so we look at the ones that we prefer to happen, or in other words, the direction or vector we want the future to go. And we ask ourselves a question, okay, what can we do to try to influence the future so that it goes in that preferred direction and not in the unpreferred or non-preferred direction? And this is the idea, the whole idea of future shaping is that we develop foresight and then we use foresight to proactively and preemptively act and take actions, strategic actions, including innovations that we develop and transformations of the organization and so forth to shape the future. So that's the groundwork there. That's the foundation. That's what we're talking about and what we mean when we say future shaping. It's not just the foresight. It starts with foresight, but then we go far beyond that. And I'll explain some of the process in more detail in a minute. We go far beyond that to actually shape the future, especially the future of our organization and its immediate environment. How can we affect and shape that and impact that? That's the goal with future shaping. So, that being the case, what is a future shaping organization? So we define a future shaping organization as one that has institutionalized future shaping as an active and ongoing practice inside of their organization, enabling the organization to constantly and perpetually cultivate foresights and then act on those foresights to be able to shape the future. So the first step is it's institutionalized. We actually have a, if you want to call it a future shaping program, and this could be tied into any other type of strategic program, including, of course, an innovation program. We often see that innovation and future shaping married together. So future shaping is a program that's embedded inside of the organization so that it becomes an ongoing organizational practice. It's not a one-off activity. It's not a project we're going to do this year and then we're finished with it and we may not do it again for 3 or 4 or 5 more years. No, it's actually an embedded practice that we're actually doing all the time, and we do it in cycles. And there's different activities we do in different types of cycles. So it is institutionalized. And it involves developing perpetual foresight. So the organization is continually scanning and cultivating new insights about what is emerging around it in the world. And again, one of the reasons we do this constantly is because of the pace of change. It's not like our world is changing in little incremental steps every few years. It's actually changing, as we all know, quite rapidly and evolving technologically and socially quite rapidly all around us anymore these days, which is why we can't afford to do this type of work on a sporadic or as needed basis. It has to become embedded in the organization as something that we're doing constantly. And we're constantly developing foresights and we're constantly acting on those foresights. And again, this is something we're going to do in perpetual cycles, ongoing all the time. And then obviously, as I mentioned, coming out of that is proactive action. The foresights have to be acted on strategically to be able to shape the organization's future trajectory. Where are we going? Where's our industry or market and otherwise our business and government and economic environment? Where are these things going? Where do we want them to go? And so an organization, to be a future shaped organization, has to be doing all of these things. It has to have institutionalized this practice with its process and structures and roles. So it's developing foresight perpetually and then constantly acting on those foresights in proactive and preemptive ways to try to influence the future, not just reactive ways to what's happening, but actually being very proactive to trying to influence what is going to happen. That is a future shaping organization. It's an organization that is doing all of these things. So GInI, this is built on GInI's future shaping process. And again, we've spent several years developing our future shaping body of knowledge, and a lot of it, as always in our case, is we go out and we study what other curriculum has, what other programs have, what businesses are using, what governments are using. We benchmark those to look at commonalities and unique things, and then we really break that down and analyze it and study, what is the outcome of each stage, what is trying to be accomplished. And then we often come up with a lot of our own frameworks and processes that really reflect world-class practices. That's what we've done here. So the process that comes out of that is a 6-step process for future shaping. And this is a process that organizations will go through if they have institutionalized this practice. And the first step in the future shaping process is always framing and planning. And what we do is we sit down collectively as leaders in an organization, and we scope out the areas we're going to explore and the questions we're going to address in the upcoming future shaping cycle. Areas are, what domain are we looking at and what subdomains within that? And are there any specific themes within that and sub-themes that are important to us that we want to really investigate and explore further? And what are the specific strategic questions that we want to address? So we define all of that collectively as an organization. We document that, and that becomes the framework for the future shaping work we're going to do in the ensuing cycle. Perhaps we're doing this annually. We're sitting down, we're looking and revisiting these subjects, and then that's framing the work we're going to do over the next year, for example. The next step is actually where we start to dive into the foresight work, and that's scanning and curating. And here we're scanning for signals and what are called scanning hits. That's basically revealing what is emerging in the world. We're looking at trends. We may be looking at existing trends that we constantly monitor. We may go out and look for new trends that we haven't looked at before and study new trends that have some significance to us. We may look at specific events that are happening in our environment or around us, and other situations that will impact our future. So we look at all of those and we're scanning those, and we do what's called environmental scanning, which is kind of closer to home, where we're looking at what's going on in our more immediate environment. And then we also do what's called horizon scanning, which is looking further out away into more fringe areas to see what is emerging out on the horizon that may eventually become more mainstream and start to make its way into our environment and in the future impact us. So we're scanning and curating in both of those environments using a number of different methods and practices to really try to identify points of significance, those signals, if you will, about where the future is going and where we expect it to evolve as things go. The third step is analysis and foresight. And what we do in analysis and foresight is we actually take all of that information from scanning and we study it. And what we're trying to do out of that information is to look at, the trends and events and other situations and their drivers. And then out of all of that, look at the ones that are most important to us, most significant to us, will have the most impact, perhaps, more sooner rather than later, other things like that. And we're trying to develop a set of plausible future scenarios that we're going to work within. And this is where, by the way, future shaping and even foresight starts to diverge away from traditional strategic planning. So traditional strategic planning would go out and do research about our markets and environments, and it would tend to make some very basic linear extrapolations about the future under the assumption that the future will continue to be a continuation of what's happening in the present. Foresight here does not do that. It doesn't say we're going to assume the future is going to be a linear extrapolation of the present. It says that the future can be very divergent, and the future can go this way or that way, depending on the impact of different drivers. And so what we develop is a set of different plausible future scenarios that could occur. and they can be very divergent from one another. And of course, the scenarios are different depending on what point in time we're looking at. You're going to have one set of scenarios in the next year, a different set of scenarios 2 or 3 years from now, and another set of scenarios 5 years from now, and even more divergent scenarios 10 years from now. So the further out we go in time, the more the scenarios can diverge. And of course, the less definitive they become because the signals get fuzzier and fuzzier as we look out in time. But the point is, for given points in time, we're trying to develop these specific scenarios that we want to consider. And this is an important practice inside of the organization because it forces us to accept that the future can be divergent, and it won't be a single future, but it could be any one of many different futures. And we have to entertain that entire spectrum of plausible future scenarios. So the goal of the analysis and foresight stage is actually to develop those plausible future scenarios that we're going to work with in going forward. After we've done that, the next stage is what we call actualized visioning. And so the purpose here is understanding that this is the range of where the future will most likely go. Let us cast new visions or evolve our existing visions for where we want to go as an organization in light of those plausible futures. And if we see the futures shifting this way, then maybe we alter our visions a little bit more in line with that. But if we see the future and the range of scenarios are shifting this way, again, maybe we alter our vision a little in line with that. But the idea is to make sure that we are always having a vision that we're working toward that is in line with where the future is evolving. Okay, because as much as we want to influence the future, we do have limited, and every organization has limited influence that with the range within which they can actually influence it. So we need to understand sort of the general set of scenarios and then make sure we're casting a vision that is coherent with those scenarios. So that's the fourth step. And there are, again, methods and practices used for doing that. The fifth step is a very important process. And once we have that vision, we get into the fifth step, which we call collective prospection. And the idea here is, okay, we have the scenarios, we have a vision for where we want to go. Let us really sit down and think through the implications of each scenario. And specifically, what are the new opportunities they present? What are the new challenges and threats they present? And then we want to work collectively as an organization to kind of come up with as many different options as possible to address those opportunities and those challenges and those threats in light of the vision we have. And so that's the whole goal of collective prospection, is to identify different strategic options we have for what we might do. It's not a commitment yet to anything specific we're doing, but it's really sort of like brainstorming options we have and all the different options we have for shaping the future in light of our vision and the different scenarios and the different opportunities, challenges, and threats that each present as part of their implications. And then the final and sixth step in the actual process itself is what we call strategy development. And it's taking all of those options and really trying to sharpen the pencil on them. And we're stress testing them against the different plausible future scenarios to try to develop or identify robust strategies. And a robust strategy is one that will work to achieve its objectives and aims, regardless of which scenario plays out. So some strategies will be more fragile, and they're very dependent on a particular scenario playing out. They won't work under other scenarios. And yet other strategies tend to be more robust. They will be able to succeed under a multiplicity of different scenarios. So the goal is to try to find robust strategies based on all the options we looked at. And then from those to actually solidify and converge on a specific set of strategies. And this is where we're really focused on, in our case, that innovation strategy or that innovation-driven growth strategy. And specifically, what are we going to do in that strategy to shape the future? And what new innovations are we going to pursue? What transformations of the organization do we need to pursue? And what new capabilities do we need to develop in the organization to be able to do that? All of that becomes a part of the overarching innovation strategy, which has a short-term, medium-term, and long-term element to it. I'm not going to necessarily dive into the strategy structure, if any of you have had the certified innovation strategist certification or training, or the certified chief innovation officer, you've seen a lot of that structure already. But that's the goal, is to go through this whole process so that we have a new mechanism now, if you will, for influencing and developing that strategy that really now integrates the future foresight element into the strategy to make sure that our innovation strategy is aligned with where the future is going. Because what you don't want to do is have a strategy that's out of tune with where the future is going, or that breaks when a particular scenario plays out. So this is a way of really building a much better and more robust innovation strategy by making sure that strategy takes into consideration the range of plausible future scenarios we have, and has thought through the implications of those and the opportunities, the challenges, threats, and then different options, and use that to come up with a very robust overall strategy to address the future. So that's the whole future shaping process in a nutshell, and how it ties in to our innovation strategy and the innovations we want to pursue and the organizational transformations we want to pursue. So moving on, in part of that, well, let me back up. To execute that process, we need certain specific structures and roles. So you're going to find these types of roles in a future shaping organization. So what structures and roles are involved in future shaping? Institutionalized future shaping requires a dedicated function to lead all these efforts. And there's multiple roles to it. I'm going to present them to you. I'm going to start with these. So and this is not unlike an innovation program itself either. It's very similar in a lot of ways. And although the actual research and analysis activities are quite different, many of the organizational structures behind it are very, very similar. That's why they fit together very well. So the first thing we need at least a sponsor, if not two sponsors, for example. So the sponsor job is to champion, sponsor, and really safeguard the program and its efforts to make sure the program has the support and the resources it needs and the organizational backing it needs to become a healthy activity inside of the organization, and one that actually accomplishes its goals and objectives and has the impact that it's intended to. So that's the sponsor's responsibility, to really give it the political or an organizational backing and support it needs across the organization to function well and achieve its goals. The next role are leaders, and these are the individuals who are going to lead the day-to-day activities of the future shaping program. So they're going to basically oversee all of the other staff that are involved directly in the program and help them to achieve their goals, to help them to do their work and do their work well, so that the process goes effectively. We also have some support staff like technical specialists or project leaders, program managers, and so forth. And their goal is to help support the program, including execution of the resultant strategies. Now, the next thing, these are the main four roles that are primarily working underneath the leaders. And these are the four primary roles that are undertaking the future shaping process. First of all, we have researchers. And researchers are the individuals who undertake all of the scanning research and curate its results. So they're the ones that are out there constantly studying the news every day, looking for scanning hits, doing a tremendous amount of just basically research and amassing scanning hits, looking at the different signals, looking for even weak signals of things maybe that are emerging on the horizon, and bringing that to the organization's attention and documenting that. But they're collecting all the information because they're the ones doing all of the research. The next role are our analysts. And the analysts are the ones who are actually going to take all of the insights that the researchers are amassing in a given cycle, and they're going to sit down, they're going to analyze all of that insights, and then what they're going to do is they're going to craft a fresh set of plausible future scenarios from that. And a future scenario is a narrative, sort of like a storyline about what's going to happen, or what potentially is going to happen in the future. So that's what the analysts do. They analyze the insights and they study them, and they develop our plausible future scenarios. And so the researchers and analysts are working together to do what is traditionally known as the strategic foresight work. They develop all of the foresight. The next two roles are focused on the second half, the action part, which we call the strategic futuring. The first role are the visionaries, and their task is to cast compelling new visions for the future. And then the second role here are our strategists, and they are leading and understanding the different implications of the scenarios and helping us to cultivate different strategic options, and then ultimately crafting our final strategies. So, and sometimes organizations will combine some of these roles. For example, they might combine researchers and analysts on the foresight side, or they often will combine visionaries and strategists on the futuring side. But you do tend to keep the foresight work and the futuring work a little separated from each other. But organizations can have these separated into these different roles as distinct roles: researchers, analysts, visionaries, and strategists. So this collectively, this is sort of the structure and the roles that are required to be able to execute future shaping process in the organization. So let's talk about the specific certified future shaping organization accreditation. So what are the criteria for accreditation? There are 27 criteria that we examine, and they're clustered into 7 groups, and they're assessed using 326 different interview questions in the on-site assessment process. So the first cluster is what we call foundation, and again, it counts for 12% of the score. And foundation involves the sponsorship and leadership, which we touched on, philosophy and beliefs about future shaping, principles and values that emphasize future shaping, and a culture and environment that supports future shaping. And as you might suspect, a lot of this ties into the existing culture and environment for innovation, because these two things go hand in hand. And in fact, in some ways, it's hard to separate them, because if we're doing innovation well, we're doing it with an eye to the future and what the future is going to evolve into. The difference here is that we're now being much more intentional and explicit about studying and understanding the future. And so we have to expand that existing culture and that existing set of philosophy and beliefs and principles and values to now explicitly include future shaping and looking at the future and acting with the future in mind. So that gets integrated into our philosophy, beliefs, principles, values, culture, and environment. And the sponsors, the sponsor here could be the same sponsor for an innovation program that could have a common sponsor, especially if it's more of an integrated program. You'll typically have different leaders that are focused on just this work. So that's the foundation. That's 12% of the score. We start with that. Second are the mechanics. This is a big part of the score, and it's the structures and relationships that are institutionalized for doing this process, the specific roles and responsibilities. Again, do we have the researchers, the analysts, the visionaries, the strategists, the leaders, and everyone we need involved? And do we have the organization involved in helping to support the process? Role certification, that factors in. Future shaping processes. Do we actually have a formalized process where we're going through scanning, analysis, foresight, visioning, collective prospection, and strategy development? Do we have some sort of process involved or in place to do that? And then we have program governance. What are the specific things we're doing to govern the program? And then along with that, different metrics. There's governance metrics, there's operational metrics, there's capability metrics that we all look at, and we assess the organization against these governance and metrics as part of the overall mechanics. And that is a large portion of the scoring. Financing is a small part of this, but we're looking for having program funding that's used to support programming, and the project funding for any projects that are involved. Project funding, sometimes that can come from other sources like departments or maybe from an innovation budget, but as long as it's covered somewhere, that's the important point. But as far as program funding, it's, do we have the budget to support future shaping also as a formalized program? The fourth one, bear with me, is enablers. That's training and resources. Do we have the training and future shaping we need? Do we have people certified? Do we have the resources we need? Research tools. There are specific research tools that are unique to future shaping that we could use, like syndicated trends analysis and trends reports and things like that? Do we have the technology and the software? There again, there's specific tools that are used for this. Do we have the networks we need to be able to help identify signals and analyze those and consider strategies collectively with our network? So those are important enablers for the program, and that's about 10%. That is 10% of the score. Next, we have reinforcement. That's 7% of the score. And that's looking at, are we, again, how are we engaging the organization in this program? Just like an innovation program, are we recognizing people? Are we giving them some rewards for their engagement? Is there internal public relations to promote this with corporate communications internally and get people engaged and supporting it? And are there external public relations to promote this externally and help have having people outside the organization, other stakeholders, supporting us in doing this work as well? And let's see, next we look at the strategy. This is 15% of the score. We look at, are we developing a good innovation strategy out of this process? Do we have a good innovation strategy management process? And then what are the actual strategy outcomes happening as a result? And then lastly, we look at the outcomes. This is 15% of the score. What are the actual outcomes, results, and impacts that are happening as a result of our organization pursuing institutionalized future shaping? And what are the organizational perceptions of our work here? And then what's the overall success that we're having? So these are the 7 groups we have involving the 27 different criteria. And there's a body of questions that the assessors use to address each of these areas in the assessment process. This is all based on the GInI Certified Future Shaping Organization Framework, which is just a framework showing those same clusters and except the outcomes are at the bottom. So those same clusters and groups and areas and so forth. And that's just showing visually what that structure looks like. And this ties into, again, the individual certification, the Certified Future Shaping Professional, because in that certification, you're learning all about these different activities, especially a lot on the mechanic side, the structures, the roles, the process, etc. And of course, this is the foundation for the Certified Future Shaping Organization Accreditation. So in the accreditation assessment, you get scored based on the answers to the questions, and each criteria is scored on a range of 0 to 10, and the results get combined with weightings to produce an aggregate score. So, and then you have a resultant ranking from that. So you have to at least get over a 2 to qualify. So this is on a star system. So if your score overall is 3 to 4.99, you have 3 stars. 5 to 5.99 is 4 stars. 6 to 6.99 is 5 stars. 7 to 7.99 is 6 stars. And then at the top, we have 8 to 10, which is 7 stars. So what we're looking at here is, again, your organization's level of maturity and capability with the future shaping process on an organized institutional level. And so all of the questions are designed to assess your organization's level of maturity there. And then the result produces that level of scores. So this is a formal maturity assessment of the institutionalized future shaping process. So if your organization wants to pursue this, how does it go through the assessment? The first step is you need to, just like all of the other major accreditations from GInI, start with your authorized training and assessment provider, work directly with that provider to plan for and organize the assessment. And then that provider is going to bring on board 2 authorized innovation assessors who are going to undertake the formal assessment process. During the assessment, that's where the assessors will work through what we call the Future Shaping Maturity Assessment Tool, the FUSMAT. And that's the 326 questions they're going to go through and score your organization on to determine the final scoring and ranking. And then finally, the assessors will write the formal report, the Future Shaping Maturity Assessment Report, and they'll prepare that and they'll submit it to GInI. That report, like our other assessment reports, includes a summary, details, radar plot, gap analysis, root cause assessment, and so forth. So after they finish the report, the assessors will share the assessment report with GInI, and then assuming if everything is warranted, GInI will share that with the organization in issuing the accreditation. Okay, so that's the process. So certified future shaping accreditation is a testament to your organization's maturity in future shaping and its commitment to actually actively shaping its future through proactive, preemptive, foresight-informed actions. You earn the accreditation by successfully passing the assessment and paying the GInI accreditation fee. It signifies your organizational maturity in future shaping and your commitment to proactively and preemptively shaping the future through foresight-driven strategy. And then you will maintain your accreditation by paying the annual renewal fee to GInI. And then every 2 years, you need to go through an ongoing reassessment, just like with the certified innovative organization or certified government and innovative organization. It's the same procedural process and flow. So that really brings me to the end of the presentation. I will end the PowerPoint. Bear with me. Let me see. End of slideshow. I will touch on, I think you're still seeing my screen here, the master book. This is the GInI Applied Future Shaping Master Book, as you see on the GInI website here, and it has 4 sub books to it. The first book is really all the foundations of future shaping knowledge. The second book gets more into the roles and the process and the actual mechanics of future shaping. The third book is really all about the methods that support future shaping, and there are lots and lots of different methods. And we've tried to be fairly comprehensive without going too overboard, but there are a lot of methods that are involved. And then the fourth book gets into future shaping summary and resources, and it touches on innovation strategy. It touches on institutionalizing future shaping, and it summarized the whole body of knowledge and some other reference stuff. So, you definitely, I encourage everyone to pick up the Applied Future Shaping Master Book. For certain, study the first and second books as a good starting point. And then, if you want to prepare for the certification, work through the other 2 books and get ready for that. So I mentioned that, and again, this is also the foundation for the professional certification that you can start preparing for now as Certified Future Shaping Professional. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to, at this point, open up the floor to questions and answers. And so you're welcome to put questions that you have in the chat or in the question. And I already see a couple there I'm going to address. Or you're also welcome, if you want, to raise your hand and turn on your camera and microphone and ask any question you have, and we'll be happy to try to let you present your questions and then answer them. So Mustafa asked a question: analyst and visionary roles are the same. What are the key differences among them? So analyst and visionary roles are not the same. Analysts have to focus on studying the signals that are being determined from the scanning and be able to construct plausible future scenarios based on the drivers of those events and trends. All right, so signals are trends and events and other situations. They have drivers associated with them. Some of those drivers are not that important or critical. Others are more important and critical. We call those the critical uncertainties. So the analysts have to, their skill is to take all of that signals, understand the drivers, understand which are critical uncertainties, and develop that set of plausible future scenarios from them. Their role ends there. Visionaries are more focused on casting the new vision. Okay, given that we have that range of plausible future before us, where do we as an organization want to go, and how do we want to shape and influence the future? So those are 2 very different roles. Muhammad wants to know, why does mechanics section have a major percentage compared to others? It's because in future shaping, it's a very process intensive and structure and role intensive undertaking. And also, you compare that, for example, to the innovation accreditation. Innovation put a little more emphasis on the outcomes and results, in which those are very important, and they're very important here too. But in the case of future shaping, the reality is trying to assess the outcomes and results it has another level of abstraction to it. It becomes even harder because sometimes it can take many years actually to actually see the impacts of the strategies we're taking today to be able to assess that. So it gets to be another level higher, harder to base everything on just outcomes and results. So as a result, we shift more to looking at the process and the structure and the roles, and we really focus heavily on that, because if we're doing the process right, then there's a pretty good chance we're going to have the outcomes and results that we want. So there's a big emphasis on the mechanics behind the whole thing, because that's where we can most immediately measure and assess what's going on from a future shaping maturity standpoint. Mustafa wants to know, what are the qualifications needed for getting certified future shaping? So as a professional, as an individual, if you want to achieve the certified future shaping professional certification, it's in a lot of ways it's similar to like one of the intermediate level innovation certifications. You need to have a certain amount of experience, and it's all on the website. If I can share that real quick on the website. I believe it's this screen. And if you look under certification here, it's here. The exam will be coming probably end of this month or so. So that's the part that's coming soon. But basically you need to meet the qualifications. And so here it is right here under obtaining. You need to have a certain amount of experience, and that's laid out here. So basically, so for example, if you have a bachelor's degree, you need at least 2 years of experience. Then you need to buy a copy of the Applied Future Shaping Master Book. And you can either self-study from the Master Book, or eventually will be a training program that's not out there quite yet, but that's forthcoming. You could take a course in it. But ultimately, you need to take and pass the Certified Future Shaping Professional exam to get certified. So, but for now, what you need to do is to get a copy of the Applied Future Shaping Master Book and start studying this, because it is quite a lot of knowledge that you need to develop to get there. So that's where you need to start the process, and those are the qualifications. So there's a question here about the assessors. So in the assessment process, currently as it is today, right now, we are using our existing authorized innovation assessors. These are individuals who hold existing GInI high-level certifications, as well as a secondary certification in doing assessments. This assessment process is very similar to the, say, for example, the Certified Innovative Organization assessment process. It's just that the subject of the questions are different. Okay. So if you're an assessor, I will say this, it will benefit you to achieve the Certified Future Shaping Professional certification in addition to all your other GInI certifications. But at this point in time, we're not making that mandatory. But in due time, we may make that a requirement that the assessor also has to have that. But it's not mandatory for being able to do the assessment process itself. So you could do the assessment today, right now, with existing authorized innovation assessors, and they can, because GInI has developed the tools, the assessment tool, the assessment report, the guidebooks, and everything for doing it. They can use, and they are licensed to use GI's tools to do that. So if you're an assessor, that's good news, but I would encourage everyone to really think about getting the professional certification in future shaping. So I think I answered the Aisha's question, the same thing. At the present moment in time, the answer is no. They don't need the additional certification. Stay tuned if that changes in the future, but currently they don't. When will the certification be launched? Again, the master book is already out there, so you can go ahead and get the master book and start preparing for it. The exam itself should be available in a few weeks from now. And then at that point, you can get certified. The training course will be available later this year for providers to deliver. That's something that we have to finish working on. But say by the end of May or early June, you should be able to have access to the exam and be able to get the certification. But the first step is to get the master book and study that. So I think I asked Rula's question. So Brian wants to know, what have you found is the most effective strategy for selling this program? So, here's the thing. I don't have yet to meet an organization that does not need to do future shaping or that does not benefit from future shaping. I know in some situations, in some countries, in the government, it's an integral part of the government excellence frameworks that are used and the expectation for part of the vision that the government might have. So those those organizations that fall under that umbrella are assessed against their activities in future shaping. So having this accreditation is certainly uh, a major credential for an organization to have if they're assessed against that activity. But aside from that, I mean, just look around you and look at the rate and the pace at which things are changing, right? So ask yourself, what organization doesn't need to be doing future shaping? Every organization needs to be doing it. And I think we've come to a point in time where it really needs to become a structured institutional process with, treated like a professional practice and a profession like other professions and done professionally. So this is a way to help organizations do future shaping professionally, not just foresight, but actually understanding how to analyze scenarios for opportunities and challenges and threats, and then study options that we have and develop robust strategies from that. So what we're giving you is a tool set to be able to do that in a structured, systematic, and professional way so that it has a lot more strategic impact, and every organization benefits from that. So every organization would benefit from using our body of knowledge and pursuing the accreditation. Uh, right, and I think I answered Ahmed's question. What is the future from career perspective of getting certified in future shaping? So Mustafa wants to know, the career perspectives about this. Again, there are a lot of organizations I've encountered around the world in different places that are looking more and more looking to do future shaping work more institutionally, more professionally, more strategically. And so there is a desire for people who have this knowledge and skill in actually doing future shaping work. Whether you want to function as a researcher or an analyst or a visionary and strategist, it really, you can focus on different areas, but organizations need people who have the certification. So if you talk to an organization and they're even in the least thinking about future shaping as a professional strategic activity, which they should be, and you tell them that you hold professional certification in future shaping, I think that's going to go a long ways in promoting your career, getting a new job or finding new opportunities in your existing organization. Again, the more organizations go about formalizing future shaping, the way they have other programs, the more I think you're going to see demand for professionals who have this knowledge and skill and the professional certification. So I would say that the prospects are good. I don't have specific quantitative numbers on the percentage of organizations that have institutionalized this yet, but I do know it's growing. I do know the focus on it is growing and becoming more focused. So I think the demand for professionals will continue to grow. And you look at you look at so much is changing rapidly, particularly with AI and things in this area, and which is a great benefit to the research you need to do here. Very helpful. But if you sit in front of an organization and you say, "Hey, look how fast the world is changing around you," do you know how to look at the future and think about plausible future scenarios and options, your optionality and your strategies in light of that? Most of the time, they're going to say, "No, we haven't really cracked that nut yet. We haven't figured it out." And you say, "I have the knowledge and skill to do that." They're probably going to hire you on the spot or promote you into a role that will do that. So hopefully that will happen for you. But certainly, I think it presents bright future prospects, particularly in organizations that have a desire and interest to do that, which is a growing field. Let's see. I think that's all the questions in the question box. Let's see if there's some different ones in the chats. Okay, so uh, uh, so the question is, yeah, well, first of all, asked about the PowerPoint. Be happy to do that. After the webinar, we will follow up with a link to the recording that we post, and we'll include the presentation with that. Musad wanted to know, is this work with all industries, medical, commercial, let's say banking, finance, etc.? Great question, first of all, Musad. That's a great question. And the answer is absolutely yes. I mean, uh, now the truth is some industries are moving faster than others. High tech obviously moves very fast. But you look at finance and banking, it's moving fairly quickly. Medical technology is definitely moving quickly. Fields that don't move as quickly might be something like industrial technology, industrial equipment. But even those are impacted by things like Internet of Things and supervisory control and data acquisition systems that are becoming more and more pervasive in industry and are now being integrated with AI systems for more agentic sort of control of industrial systems. So all industries are being impacted by the pace of change with technology. So this knowledge and skill is relevant to every industry. Some industries are moving faster than others, and I just leave it to say that the faster your organization has to move because of what's happening around it, the more pertinent this knowledge and capability are to your organization. Um, Another individual made the point that, our heavy focus on mechanics was heavier than the foundation, but most programs fail because of weak leadership conviction, not weak mechanics. What's the evidence for that weighting? And it's a valid point. I mean, that's why the foundation is 12%, not 5%. It does count. My experience is if you don't have the right foundation, then the mechanics aren't, that's going to bear out in the mechanics as well. The mechanics are not going to function that well because the foundation is not in place. So, and when we're actually scoring the mechanics, what's going to happen is we're going to discover that, okay, the process is not going well because the organization is not supporting it. And so, yeah, even though technically that originates in the foundation, it will manifest in the mechanics. And so the mechanics, I can just tell you from experience, the mechanics will not score well if the foundation doesn't also score well. They go hand in hand. And a poor foundation will also manifest and show up in a poor mechanics, poor process, poor support, and things like that. So they do affect each other. Another question here, Gita has asked, uh, are there different teams for innovation and future shaping, or could they be the same team? That's a great question. Um, I would say in general, they're separate teams. Okay. Now they may fall under the same leadership. So for example, you may have this business unit that's like strategy, right? Or the strategy arm of the organization. And you may have it the future shaping and innovation are both part of that strategy organization, which is actually the ideal structure. Because all of this ultimately comes down to what strategy you're going to execute. So innovation, let's say, for example, innovation and future shaping are together under strategy, and maybe they're treated as a collective program, the innovation and future shaping program, which is often the case. Or I've seen others that are innovation, future shaping, and advanced technology or advanced R&D, and they're all collectively together as a coherent program. It's perfectly fine for them to be a collective, coherent program put together. But then the actual people doing the work will generally be different people because think about the researchers and analysts. That's a full-time job just going out and studying news every day, looking for scanning hits, curating all that. And then it's a full-time job for analysts to sit down and really study those every day. May not be developing new scenarios every day. Maybe they're looking at drivers, they're evaluating their criticality, their impact. But basically, they're full-time jobs. And even the visionaries and strategists, that tends to be something of a full-time job to constantly be leading, say, workshops in the organization where we're getting leaders together, we're studying options and our optionality and then and working toward new strategies. That tends to be a full-time job, and that tends to be separate work than some of the innovation people are doing, who are probably going out and doing more research that are very specific to a market opportunity or market need. So comes a point in the process where the two activity streams start to merge together, and it's as we're starting to look at optionality and strategies, because it may be that when we look at all our options for certain opportunities, for example, before we pick one as a strategy, we may start to engage the innovation team to, hey, go out and do more research in this area and study, learn more about the option and the opportunities involved, and whether we think these are going to be big opportunities or little opportunities, viable. And so the future shaping people may engage the innovation people to go help with some of that research at that collective prospection stage. And then when we start actually moving into formalizing strategies, again, that's where a lot of the research that the innovation team will again inform the process. So I still say it would be different people, but the processes very much start to flow together. And even, even the innovation team, when they're looking at opportunities, right, they should be very much aware of the strategic foresight that's coming out of our scanning and our analysis process. So they certainly should be privy to that information. And then, so a lot of the research thereafter is going to be to support the future shaping process. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they come together when we're working on the innovation strategy, when we ultimately develop, okay, what projects do we need to be pursuing? Really, the two streams, future shaping and innovation, merge together at that strategy development process. And they're going to work very, very closely together in developing that strategy. But then when it actually comes to executing that strategy, and undertaking the projects, especially the long-term projects, that's where an innovation group would be the ones to go out and execute the projects. The future shaping staff themselves generally don't get involved in executing the projects and initiatives that come out of the strategy. Generally, that's given to the innovation staff. So it's very important to have that staff to actually be there to execute the strategies. Okay. So hopefully that answers that question. And then another question, a few more questions here, and we'll wrap things up because we're coming to the top of the hour. But this is very good. So from a provider's and assessor's perspective, how should the readiness, what does the readiness process look like for organizations wanting to get accredited, but they're not yet eligible? Well, that's a great question too. Um, um, the first step for an organization that we don't have a program in place, the first step is to get copies of the Applied Future Shaping Master Book, get your people certified, as many as you can in that, to try to start bringing that knowledge and capability in-house, and then start working toward a structured, again, the Master Book lays out in that last fourth book, organizational future shaping. It lays it out for you. So you can take that and sort of use that as a roadmap to create your structure and processes and roles and everything for future shaping, and start developing that capability in-house. If you want the tool set we have, there is a self-assessment for organizations they can undertake to try to get a very quick snapshot of their level of maturity. And you'll know, do we have these structures in place? Do we have these people in place? Do we have these processes in place? Do we have this culture in place? You'll know if you have that, and you can score yourself on those things, and you can kind of get a pretty rough sense of where we'll fall on our level of maturity. Are we low, medium, or high? And you can kind of, from all the structure we present in this body of knowledge, you can see what you need to do to start really developing a more formalized program here, and how to tie that into what else you're doing as an organization. And then as you feel like, yeah, we've got a program, we're starting to get more maturity, you can certainly engage a provider and have an assessor come in and do a more in detailed, like a pre-assessment, if you want. How are we looking? Are we even ready to pursue formal accreditation or not? You can do a pre-assessment with a provider to do that. And then when you're ready, you can do the formal assessment with two assessors under a provider to pursue the accreditation. But that's the journey. That's the journey. Start with the body of knowledge, start with getting people certified, and then develop the capability using our materials as your roadmap and guidebook there. Another question is, are there any future shaping accreditations in the market? How's CFS different? I'm going to answer that this way. There are no accreditations that are future shaping in the way that we presented it here. There are accreditations, or I shouldn't say accredited, there are professional certifications in foresight and strategic foresight and strategic futuring, but none of those professional certifications go as far as our certified future shaping professional does, and actually talking about actually shaping the future. And there's two futures, you'll learn about this in the body of knowledge. There's the exploratory future, which is what's going to happen if we don't act, and then there's what's called the normative future. What will happen if we try to influence and shape the future through our strategies? And our program really places a lot of emphasis on pursuing and trying to achieve that normative future, having that impact in the future. So that's what really differentiates this certification accreditation from a lot of the other programs that are on the market, is because it has an explicit focus on that strategic action and strategic impact of literally shaping and owning the future, not just having foresight. So without getting into details of what else is out there in the market, but there are foresight certifications, but this goes a lot farther than a lot of those do. So that's how it's different. Where can we find the assessment in the site? So if you're looking for like the self-assessment and so forth, email GInI at gini@gini.org and just ask for it, and we can provide it for you. There is a guidebook on the site, and you should read the guidebook first, and then if you want the self-assessment, you can email us and ask us for it, or you can, if you already have a provider you're working with, you can ask them to provide it as well. So that's where you can get it. So that kind of, I think, taps out all of the questions. There was, I think, one last one. We'll take that last question, and then we're at the top of the hour. We'll wrap it up and go from there. So, last question: have educational institutions used the future shaping approach successfully? Any difference with the for-profit organizations? My experience is there are some bigger universities that have done this and have done it well. I mean, here's an example. University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, Michigan, does this at some level. And they also are making investments like venture capital, corporate venture capital investments in organizations that they believe are helping to shape the future. So University of Michigan invested in OpenAI, and they invested a few $1 million. Now that's actually worth several $1 billion. And they did that investment based on where they believe the future is going because of the future shaping type work they're doing. So there are universities that are doing this and are taking some preemptive actions as a result. But I would say they are the minority. I think there's some more advanced, larger universities are doing this. And what percentage of overall universities are doing this? Probably less than 10%. So at the same time, even in the private sector, it's only, I think, a minority of organizations that are doing this properly and doing it well. A lot of organizations dabble in it and do it amateurishly, but probably a minority do it professionally and do it well. So I think that's true in both domains. So with that, thank you so much all for, first of all, for your participation in this webinar and for your wonderful and great questions, and for participating in this. I just want to thank you all for that. And again, if you have further questions, feel free to email GInI about them and ask those questions. We're here to answer your questions. And but by all means, do look at purchasing the master book and pursuing the professional certification, the business accreditation. And we look forward to that really helping a lot of organizations have a big impact in the future. So with that, I'm going to sign off and say thank you all so much, very much, and have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Take care.